Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights session. Today, I'm really pleased to have another three excellent guests with us today. Today, we're talking about building rapport with stakeholders. And as a business analyst, that is absolutely a very important topic, as I'm sure we'll hear today. Before I go around and ask for some introductions, just like to ask anybody, if you haven't subscribed already, it's always nice if you would. Also, if you've got any comments to share, any perspectives to share, please do that in the comments. It's always nice to hear what you've got to say as well. And if you've enjoyed the video, why not make a like as well? Because then I'm sure others get to see it. So I'm told anyway. All right, but that's about it from me for now. Let's start with some introduction, as I said. And Scott, if we could start with you, please.
Sure, absolutely. I am a consultant based in the United States, north of Boston, and work principally as a business process consultant. So I for years, I've described myself not as a BA, but as BA adjacent. So it's a space in which I'm comfortable working. It's a community of people that I've truly enjoyed for the last 20 plus years. But I'm one of those people who has never actually held the title business analyst in my career. Nevertheless, the business process focus that I've had for the last 20, probably 25 years has helped guide my way through this community and allowed me to share some ideas with BAs about process mapping and process analysis. The other thing that I do is I spend a fair amount of time doing data visualization sorts of things. So whether it's visualizing how we are doing in executing a process or something completely unrelated, doing data visualizations for a theme park operator, as I did a couple of years ago, or in the context of in other business contexts. So that's the two things I do primarily: business process and process mapping in particular, and data visualization.
Excellent, thank you, Scott. And process always sounds close to my heart. I will say that. I always, probably not too many BAs that don't get to work on process at any one point anyway. So right. Maybe it's a good thing to have that officially there in the title rather than hidden away. But thank you for your intro. David, would you mind introducing yourself as well, please?
Hello, I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching me from. So I'm David, and I'm the founder of DOBAC. DOBAC is a community that help business analysts to find their fate and also add value in terms of getting theoretical background and also having practical hands-on. Before that, I will say that I've been a business analyst for a decade now. And I cover part of my job as requirement engineering, and I've been consulting for manufacturing industry. I've consulted for public sector as well, and I've worked across multiple countries. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me here, John.
Brilliant, David. Thank you very much. And Abele. See if Abele is. There we go.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Introduce yourself, please, Abele, if you could.
Okay, Abele Patricia Adekwu, and I'm from Nigeria. I've worked in various sectors. I've worked across business development, health sectors, and basically on the banking sector as well. I have about 2 years plus working as a business analyst and some years working as a project management. Currently, I work for a healthcare startup, which is a telemedicine company. So that's what I do for now, while keeping chances open. Good to be here. I'm so glad to speak here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Abele. Thank you. Sorry for mispronouncing your name before, but it's good to. I'm always glad you clarified that. So excellent. So let's start with a question in terms of what does building rapport with stakeholders mean to you in the context of business analysis and why it's important? And Scott, if you wouldn't mind leading us on that one, please.
Sure. A couple of thoughts. One, part of what I want to do in any conversation, in any set of conversations, is to establish a degree of professionalism. I want people to appreciate that I am coming to them for business reasons and that they should develop a basis if we don't know each other in advance. So I hope that they will develop a basis for appreciating that I have a professional approach to the work that we're going to be doing together. In a very real sense, I'm not sure that establishing rapport is different in the BA context than in almost any other work context. But it is absolutely essential because a big part of being a BA is about conversation. It's about asking questions and getting answers and delving deeper when you have, you get an initial set of answers. The 5 whys come into play more often than we think about when we think about them consciously. But we are continually asking questions, and the basis for doing that is having some fundamental rapport.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think you're absolutely right, Scott, in terms of it's not just exclusive to business analysts that we have to build rapport, but it is really important as stakeholders are our lifeblood, really, our lifeblood, as they say.
Right.
David, it'd be good to hear your view on that same question after the excellent start from Scott.
Yeah, I would say building rapport when it comes to business analysis. I would say that this, is not just something you need to have, right? It's solely the bedrock, for being a successful business analyst. If you can get it right, I would say that you're gonna make massive achievement, while working on the project, because the fundamental thing you need to do is how to communicate, how to build the relationship. And in one of my previous, sessions, I said I've understood rapport to be 2 things in general. And the first one is, I would say, requirement, relationship. So if you want me to add the 3rd R now, I'm going to add the 3rd R, which is rapport. So if you, as a business analyst, if you've got the right relationship, if you got the right requirement, you're going to be successful. Quote me. Yeah, you can quote me on that. So I would say that building rapport with stakeholders is about, you forging, genuine relationship. So it could be informal at first, then it can transit to being formal. Because I will say that before you up on any project, and I'm not going to talk about that, so I can leave something else for another person to say. Before you get on a project, I will say that it's good for you to build the rapport, when you communicate with the stakeholder, when you have that informal chat to break the barrier. When you break the barrier, it makes it easy. So I'll just stop there for now, John.
That's it. But you made a few good points there, David. But I think the communication is really aided, as you say, when you've got that rapport with stakeholders. Abele, what would be your perspective on that same point?
Okay, in my opinion, I believe building rapport with stakeholders is key. As David said, he said it's the bedrock. It's actually quite the bedrock. It's the foundation. You can't be talking with stakeholders when they don't trust you. You have to learn to communicate properly with them. You have to actually listen to them. You have to see them for who they are. You have to even listen to them. You have to draw out those things that they don't see. Because I understand that stakeholders are different. Some people are more outgoing, while some may be reserved. You have to know how to be able to communicate properly and tune your ears down to grasp every information thoroughly. It's not just by nodding your head and saying, okay, I can hear you. You have to actually listen to them. That way they'll be able to trust you, and then there'll be understanding, and then there'll be respect. That's it.
That's right. And it's such an important point, isn't it? Trying to build that trust, because it's probably quite difficult actually to gather the information from stakeholders without building that trust that actually you're going to do something valuable with the information. You're not going to turn that information into something else. You're going to represent it in the way it's intended as well. So it's really important to call that point out.
I have one more thought, if I may.
Yeah,
and
sure,
I want to pick up on a word that David used and a word that was implied in what Abele said, and that is the word genuine. That I think you want to, a big part of establishing rapport is helping people realize that you are being genuine in all of your interactions with them. So I love that. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just building on the excellent points the three of you have made, I think and it's very related to what you were saying as well. It's just building that mutual respect between yourself and the stakeholder is a good way to get into a bit more detail. It's to really understand their perspective and understand why they see something in the way that they do, why it's an issue, why it's something is important to them. So you can really represent it, or do your best representing their issues or their requirements in the most appropriate way. I think furthermore as well, I think when you've got that report, I think it aids that collaboration. It eases some of the resistance to change that we might otherwise see. And ultimately, the end result is more accurate analysis and outcomes, really, I think, as a result of that. But you made such excellent points. I won't and don't need to say anything more than that, of course. But I wonder, David, building on that first point, I mean, are there any techniques or tools or even rituals or habits that you found most effective in stakeholder trust, particularly early on?
Okay, thank you, John. When you say techniques, people tend to say, "Oh, am I looking at the most difficult one to solve a project or to get things done?" When you hear the word technique, it's something technical, it's something very hard. However, I will say that it's I'll call it hybrid, okay, and that's you using the soft skill and also the hard skill. So when I talk about the soft skill, the most paramount thing to thrive, for you to thrive as a BA is you knowing when to talk and when to listen. Okay, so I would say that genuine, like Scott said, thank you, Scott. Genuine active listening, goes a long way, and that is how you move in that direction. You flow in that direction, because when you listen actively, you understand what is this person saying to me, what is the pain point, how do I respond to my stakeholder, right? But if you don't understand what they are talking about, okay, then or when you understand when they are talking about, when you understand the pain point, when you understand when you are meant to jump on or come in to prefer solution, now you can say, okay, let's start speaking about empathy. Okay, that's when you bring it together and say, you know what, I've listened deeply, I'm gonna reflect on what you said, analyze what you said, and people want to be heard, right? People want to be heard. People want to know that you understand them, and it is really important. So I would say active listening and empathy goes a long way. So when you've done these two, or when you use these two, then you can start saying, all right, I want to get to know my stakeholder. Then you can start saying stakeholder mapping, trying to understand their persona, trying to understand, who is my go-to person, because when you walk into a room, the rule of thumb, when you walk into a room, you see that most people that are quiet, are reserved, they tend to, be the bigger boys, if I put it that way. So it's just, you're trying to say, okay, now let me map out who's involved, okay? Let me map out most person with the highest interest. Okay, let me map out the person with influence. When you get this right, these are the basic thing that you need to know. So I will stop there so that my fellow presenter here can also take one or two things. So active listening, empathy, and stakeholder mapping goes a long way for me.
Yeah, thanks, David. And a good combination there of some soft skills and some of the more, I guess, formal skills like the power influence considerations as well. So great start. Abele, over to you.
Okay, as David said, active listening is key. It's quite important. Also, you have to be able to follow up early enough. if you gather requirements, you need to be able to follow up immediately. For example, I'm giving an instance. When I first started working as a BA, as a stakeholder, I was able to give me the requirement of a digital flow, a digital onboarding flow. And then I looked at it and then I said, okay, in 2 days, I was able to follow up immediately with a mock-up of it. And he was surprised, he was impressed. And this single act of following up immediately was able to make me have more credibility for that whole project. And also, the third one I'll say is being human. It's not just by you. Okay, for example, if you have a team that are managing, it's not just by you. Okay, every time you're on Jira talking about sprint projects, you have to be able to hop on a quick call. If you're working hybrid or remotely, for example, you have to be able to hop on a quick call and say, how are you doing?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's nice that point you made about being human and sort of the human touch to it. Adding that little bit extra, showing a little bit of yourself, as it were, so that people really can build a relationship with. So I think Scott, Abele just seemed to have frozen a little bit there. So have time to hand over to you.
I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Oh, no, she's back. Did you have a final thought, Abele? You froze for a moment. That's why we're asking.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah,
I didn't even know I froze. I think it's my network. No, that was all. I think I said everything I wanted to say.
Perfect. We certainly finished on a high point. So thank you, Abele.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And Scott.
And I was thinking about similar things. Instead of being human, I was thinking about be yourself, be authentic. And it goes back to the word genuine, I guess, in a couple of minutes ago. But if people appreciate that you are who you say you are and you are who you appear to be, or you, I think you understand what I mean. But yeah, being yourself is pretty critical. So that's not a tool, but it is an important technique for not only establishing rapport but getting work done. In terms of a tool, I am not a giant fan of icebreaker kinds of questions, but I know some people I respect that I work with use that technique very commonly, especially in remote meetings. So just a question that everybody answers about something unrelated to the topic at hand, unrelated to the work topic. A way for people to share a little bit of their humanness, a little bit of themselves. It can help establish a little bit better rapport. Again, personally, I'm not as big a fan. I seldom find that I want to take the time to do that. But if it's a new group of people that I don't know, and I know that they don't know each other, or many of them don't know each other, it's a decent idea. It can work pretty well. Or at least having a little bit of casual conversation before the meat of the conversation can help.
Yeah, really good. I mentioned, Scott, it sort of comes down to personal style and preference as well to an extent. I mean, I'm with you. I find it a bit uncomfortable doing these contrived icebreakers before in a session, but I definitely think there's merit in sort of opening up a little bit beforehand and talking a little bit about who you are rather than straight into the detail and hitting people, with the content from the off. They need to know who's standing in front of them, who's presenting to them, or why people are asking. So I think them points are very they're resonating very nicely, I think.
Yeah, speaking on that, thank you, Scott and John. When you talk about icebreaker, I love icebreaker so much because I feel it's reduced the old pressure in the room, and it makes people keep calm, if I use that word. So I will give one of my scenarios. While I was using icebreaker, I was presenting at GBAD, that's a Global Business Analysis Day. So, and my icebreaker, when I said, you know what, I have over, and this is a way to also, that is my own perspective though, it's a way to, to enhance that relationship. I said, I've got, so I'd use two truths and a lie. That's my icebreaker, two truth and a lie. And using that, I will say that, okay, I'm going to give you two truth and one lie. So I said, I've got about 130 LinkedIn followers, 30,000 LinkedIn followers. Right. And people were like, okay, is this true? Is this not true? Is this true? But do you know the funny thing? After that session, right, I got more connection because I was able to give them value. They got value from that. And that's an informal, if you put it that way, an informal way of creating relationship. But in this context, right, when we talk about tools, and I think I didn't mention that, I would say there are several tools out there, but the most convenient one for you, or the most you feel is the best practice, I would say that's what you go with. So when we talk about tools, we have the like of Slack, we have the like of Teams, for your retrospective and your informal chat and others like that. I don't know if any other person wants to add to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely fair in terms of your different style that you want to apply, whether you actually use a tool as well. It can all sort of depend, really, I guess, on a variety of things. And maybe, I think to the point made, I think if you're particularly strong at, a particular technique or an icebreaker, as it were, then by all means introduce them. But sometimes the fact that maybe we aren't as strong or confident about using the technique definitely shouldn't be a reason not to use it. Sometimes actually just using a technique or an approach that you haven't used before will be a good way to get better at it in the longer term as well. So probably something to do if you're not as comfortable.
I used an icebreaker that was outside my comfort zone just last week. I spoke at Building Business Capability, the annual IIBA conference. And it was a session I was doing with another guy, and it was neuroscience themed. It was about how if we know more about the human brain, we can use that knowledge to communicate more effectively, build better teams, and so forth. Yeah. And because the session was focused on the human brain, and because I've done a little bit of musical theater in my background and once played Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, I actually opened the session by singing "If I Only Had a Brain." And it was different. I was happy that it was very well received. So this was not an icebreaker for me to get the people to tell themselves about themselves, but it was a way to get everybody to loosen up a little bit, and it was fun. I think I'll do it again, if the setting is right. But that's an extreme example in my case.
There's definitely a reason for people to look out for Building Business Capability or wherever else you're presented next year, Scott. They'll expect that, but that's the trouble. I think just building on all the points you said, I think I would just say, in terms of techniques or habits, I think being transparent is a good habit to be in. So, for example, if there's models you use, be it process or functional models, there's no reason not to do it in front of the stakeholder, to share with them at least what you've used to interpret their information or to present their information. Because I think once they start to recognize that, however the technique you use, even if you don't use technique, that you've understood what they've asked and what they've said, and even if you haven't fully understood it, you're willing to share what you have understood to give them an opportunity to correct course if you've got it wrong for some reason.
That's why I particularly liked Abele's example a moment ago about quicker turnaround, helping her gain rapport and trust with a stakeholder. If you can make the extra effort to do that, to surprise somebody pleasantly by showing that showing your understanding of what they've said, and conveying it in a way that helps further the conversation, that's brilliant. So I like that.
It makes me think as well, Scott, that another dimension as well, if we can try and find some quick wins that we can provide quickly, like process changes, building on what you're obviously doing at the moment, process changes, they don't have to be system changes, but anything that you can recommend that provides immediate or quick benefit to the stakeholder, it's going to get you on that path to building a rapport and helping them realize that you really care about what's in it for them as well.
Abele, I'm curious, in the example you cited, was what did you show the stakeholder? Was it a flow chart or another kind of diagram?
Yes, actually, it was like a mock-up of the plan. We were experiencing something like severe customer churn. So we needed to basically it was cumbersome method in account opening process. And so I was able to like reduce the steps. And so I just created an easier step, like a simple flow chart on VCO, and I was able to show the stakeholder, and that was it.
Okay, good.
I think we've heard about a few different approaches and techniques or tools or habits even. But are there any ways that you tend to adapt your communication style based on the stakeholders, for example, based on their seniority or their understanding? And I wonder, Abele, perhaps we'll start with you first, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay, first of all, to communicate with stakeholders, stakeholders are different, approaches are different. For example, if you are talking with an executive, you can't be talking about some things that are not important. You have to go straight to the point. You have to show the stakeholder what the problem is. Tell them the major pain points. Tell them how the solution, the proposed solution, and the percentage of amount that solution will solve the problem. So that's it in essence for executives. And for example, for customer service, if you want to communicate with them as a BA team, like I'm giving an instance of where I work in a bank, where I worked in a bank. If you now want to communicate with the customer service, you ask them questions like, what's the complaints that customers come up with most times when they call or when they drop in at the bank? So with them, the details are more in-depth. Like the communication style is different. And in essence, it's not about losing yourself, it's about regarding them as well. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a fair point. I like the point about not losing yourself, because I think sometimes we think about adapting our communication style. Does that mean we're actually moving away from our natural way that we would communicate, or from being genuine, I guess, to what Dave made earlier? And I don't think that is the case, as you pointed out. Scott, what would be your perspective on that same question?
Could I pass to David? I have a couple of thoughts that it's going to be a little bit of a tangent, but so let me, if David, if you don't mind going next.
Let's put David on the hotspot.
Okay. Okay, Scott, it got me there. So, yeah. I like the way Abele has described it. I liked a definition, but in my perspective and my opinion, I'm gonna say that mine is actually based on speaking the right language. Okay, and I've said that I have three languages. Okay, the first language is the technical language. The second language is the business language, and the third one is the practical language. Now, what do I mean? If you look at the business language, when she was speaking, Abele was speaking, she mentioned about executives, right? If you look at them, you see that they don't have time. They don't have time for you to do the rigmarole. So their language is basically data driven. And how do you represent data-driven things? You put the scenario, either your dashboard. If it's not your dashboard, you use infographics. Straight to the point. Speak to it. Speak to your results. Okay, that's the business language. But when you look at the technical language, that is because okay, for me, I have a background in IT, right, and a mixture. So I call myself an hybrid. So and a mixture of the business, part. So when it comes to technical terms, when it comes to speaking technical language, I know how to relay that. So at the appropriate time, I speak the right language to people, and I feel like that is the right language to the stakeholder, and I feel like that is the way to adapt. Okay, but when we talk about the practical language, let's say she mentioned the frontline officers or frontline people, which are either the customer representative or any other person. You make it practical because they are the ones interfacing with the end user. If I put it in a project terms now, right? She said she worked in a bank. They are the ones interfacing with the end user. The end user will tell them their pain point. Okay, the customer person will receive it. But if the customer service is not speaking the right language to that end user, they might not be able to provide solution. So I would say to adapt, and I'll go back to my first illustration. To adapt is to develop the empathy, to understand. The basic thing is understanding what matters to each group, what matters to each stakeholder. Scott, I'm going to pass it to you now. I know you're ready.
Thank you. That was actually great. I love that idea. I've looked at the BA role forever as one of a translator. In very many respects, it's, our jobs are to translate from business speak to tech speak, and in both directions. Yeah. And I love the addition of practical language as a third component. So thanks. That's kind of cool. John, if you wanted to interject, go ahead.
I mean, just building on what David said there. I mean, I think it definitely makes me think that before we start adapting our style, it's important to actually understand who your stakeholders and your audience are as well. And I think that's probably one of the points I would make. And I think it's not just about style; it's about the medium that you choose as well. So sometimes it might be a face-to-face meeting. You might have to put a deck or a proposal together. Sometimes it's an email or maybe even a text. But knowing who your audience is and knowing what the right medium is with that audience will really help whatever your message is, help it land. That's probably all I'll say. And we're all building up to the big crescendo, Scott, to your turn.
So my tangent, and this is actually related to the presentation I did at BBC last week that I mentioned. So there's a consultant by the name of David Rock, and he wrote a book called, it's right here. He wrote a book called Your Brain at Work. And I first came across this about 10 years ago, and it's an easy to read book. It's built around stories, and so there's the storytelling element that helps a lot of us learn. And one of the pieces I picked out of that book that I really love is something he calls the SCARF model. And what he says is that our brains crave 5 things at all times, and we perceive either what are threats or rewards to these 5 things. And I won't go too far down this path, but status, he calls it the SCARF model because it's status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And so in any of our communications, and this is independent of whether I'm talking to an executive or talking to a colleague or peer or a frontline worker that I don't know, anything I can do that helps appeal to their sense of status, their sense of certainty, not springing surprises on them, their sense of autonomy, that they have control and they can take responsibility, their sense of relatedness, which turns out to be one of the most important among the 5, feeling a sense of belonging, and certainly their sense of fairness. So the book goes into lots of great detail and examples of how things might be perceived as threats to any one of those 5 or multiple of them, and how things may be perceived as rewards. So I look at it as a really great model for any human interaction. It doesn't even have to be work. This is true at home. The same things are going on in everybody's brains. So on one level, I love what Abele said and David said in terms of what roles people are within an organization and how we change what we do. Important to do that. But we're all human beings at some level, and that's why I love this SCARF model.
And definitely one to look into. It's interesting through these sessions. There's the amount of books that have been called out over time. So definitely add that one to the list, and I will put it in the notes so people can refer to it as well. So I appreciate that. I wonder then, Scott, how do you ensure consistency and reliability when you're in your interactions in order to maintain that rapport? Because if you build a rapport, we're going to try and maintain it, really.
Yep. 2-word answer, I guess. What I said before, be yourself. There's value. You're going to help you're going to help be consistent if you aren't trying to be somebody else at different times in different audiences. So the more you are yourself, the more it just happens that you are consistent rather than having to make it a conscious effort.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. It takes the pressure off trying to remember who you were the last time you engaged with somebody, if you yourself. I know my memory's not always great, so I think knowing who I am is easy. I know that bit.
There's an old story or an old adage about if you're going to tell a lie, just make sure it's the same lie every time. Tell the same lie to everybody, because otherwise you're stuck trying to remember, right?
That's it. Now you put pressure on us to be consistent now for the rest of the session.
That's right.
David, over to you on that one. She's just frozen, so maybe we'll go to Abele first.
Okay, how I maintain clarity, right? So how I do that usually, I do weekly check-ins. For example, if there's a project that's been carried out, I don't need to wait for a new addition. You can just like say, okay, this is it. You're a member of your team, you show them what it is. This is what it is. Where there's a new addition, let them know let them stick to the rules. This is what is going on. And also, I make sure I don't, how will I put it? I don't over promise. I stick to what I can do. If I know I can't deliver on so time, if I know it won't work, it's better to say it won't work. I remember there was a time a stakeholder wanted a particular feature to be added, and I told her it's not possible to be added in this particular sprint. You have to wait until the next sprint. Of course, she was not happy about it, but she respected the honesty, because what's the point of adding in things that will make you lose your credibility in essence? The goal is to be easily trusted, is to be trusted and be credible. So that's it. And also, I wanted to add something else, but at this point, I've forgotten the third thing I wanted to say. So probably I'll come back to it.
That's it.
Okay.
If the next other one occurs to you, Abele, you can jump in and share it. But let's hear from David what he has to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Abele. I think I'll resonate with what you said. And I'll say that for me to add to the list, there's nothing, I'll put it this way, nothing beats consistency and reliability. Okay. If you look at it, and I would say consistency is everything. And what you do, what you keep doing, you become better at it. And that's why they say if you want to become better, I remember back in those days, if you teach someone something, the more you teach the person, the better you become. Okay, so in that part, I would say that for me, when it comes to consistency, set expectation. Okay, set expectation, deliver, don't overpromise, like Abele said. It's better for you to underpromise and overdeliver. Okay, and when it comes to reliability, I would say that this it builds the foundation. It builds the foundation of trust. If I put you on a project and you are reliable, you deliver, I say that, what, this person, she's got it, she's okay with it, you deliver and you do justice to it, everything went well. You've proved yourself. Okay. So in that scenario, you see that stakeholders can, lean on you, if I use that word, okay, because they know, and they know who you are. You are reliable. You are somebody that, you can say, oh, do you want to get that thing done? Speak to A, B, C, D, E. You get what I mean? So that's the way I feel that, if you build those two, I'll say those two character, or those two skill set, or add to the skill set which Abele has mentioned, then definitely it will help you.
And I think building on what you said, David, around that consistency of behaviour, I think there's probably a consistency of the way that your tone and your style as well, the way that you behave, as it were. And being predictable, I think there's always a lot of value in that when it comes to building relationships and trying to be, people know what they're going to get every time. You're not going to be high one moment and very low the next. That's quite difficult to try and keep track of, I think.
Your comment, John, reminds me of a guy I worked with. This is 30 years ago now, but I still remember him because he was the classic case of you never knew what you were going to get when you
Yeah.
sat down with him, and there was no virtual in those days. It was always face to face, but you never knew when you sat down whether it was going to be the happy Bob or the sad Bob or the erratic, crazy Bob. It was a real challenge.
So I think we're probably all smiling because we're all that theoretical Bob as a stakeholder we've all engaged with in different ways at some
Yep.
point. And yeah, the unpredictability is quite difficult to manage sometimes. So therefore, I guess on the flip side, if we can be predictable, we're probably a little bit easier to get on with from a stakeholder perspective. I think as well, just building on what I said before, being transparent as well, trying to present a single source of the truth, and being consistent, which again is just really echoing the points David and Abele made as well. So we talk about how to what is rapport. We talk about how to build it a little bit, but are there some challenges that any of you have faced in building rapport, particularly in a remote or a hybrid environment? And if so, how do you overcome it? And I wonder, David, can we start with you on that question first?
Okay. I'm gonna give this. I'll just do a backstory. So, I worked on a project during COVID, right? And this is the time whereby everyone was locked in. So you can't go nowhere and other things like that. And the fact that I was working with some people, on the team in another country, yeah, the company had to cut across each country. So I work with different team members. Now it's the best way for me to get things done and to build rapport is to always check in on my team members. So it's not until we set a sprint, say, oh, this is going on, oh, that is going on. So it can be informal, just checking. Oh, COVID is here. Are you doing? Are you holding up? Checking on them and trying to see that you also show that word again, empathy, goes a long way. So I would say that initially, and this is for me, I would say that I struggle with Zoom because back then during COVID, it wasn't the norm. It wasn't, oh, and the phrase is, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Other things like that.
Yeah.
So, but with time, it kept on getting better. And that was the tool that I used, to say, you know what, let's set up this informal video meeting. Let's just check on everyone. How are you guys doing? So that's going to give a sense of belonging. And after that, then we can talk about other things.
Yeah, and I think those points you made there, I mean, particularly from a technical sense, it's definitely worth thinking about, because I think if some of your communication channels are prone to error, or they're inconsistent, or it's going to freeze halfway through, that in itself is going to be super difficult. So if you can try and remove some of that, then actually it's then easier to start having the conversation, to interact with a person without all that technical noise going on and that frustration. So that's a good, excellent start there on that one. Abele, what would be your view around challenges that you've faced and how to overcome?
Okay, personally, some of the challenges I've experienced in a remote setting is, okay, for example, in Nigeria here, I would say the national grid regularly collapses, and when this happens, sometimes there won't be lights, no power supply, and not everybody can afford alternative power supply. So that's a serious challenge. And in that kind of case, what I do usually, I understand that when there's limited power supply, people's devices are down, their laptops are down, phones are down. So what I do, instead of doing face-to-face meetings, I just pop up with quick messages. It could be voice notes, just to check and know how they are doing, how far the work is going. And then that's all. That way, people reply more easily instead of sending long emails and waiting for them to join you on on Teams or Google Meet or something. That way they easily reply you fast, and then it builds a rapport. And then the goal is to be real. It makes them feel part of the family, creates a sense of belonging, as you said. So that's how I'm able to tackle it.
Yeah, excellent. It makes me think as well about, the importance of not forgetting your stakeholders. I know it was a bit of a leap from what you said there, but I think it's all very easy for us at BA sometimes to spend a bit of time with stakeholders, really care about them for a few weeks while we're gathering requirements. but actually, it's no good to us if we leave them alone then for months while we're building a solution and then come back and try and rebuild the rapport again. So the point you made about keeping in touch, dropping little notes, just caring really about the person throughout the whole journey, I think is an excellent approach to overcome some of those challenges. Scott,
thank you.
What's your view on that challenges point?
The first thought that occurred to me about this particular question is, and as it relates to a hybrid or remote environment, is not completely different from the situation in a meeting room where everyone is face to face, but it exacerbates the remoteness exacerbates the problem, and that is the situation that some people just aren't comfortable talking in a meeting, or some people, for any combination of reasons, hold back and don't contribute as much as you might like them to. So while in a face-to-face meeting, it can require some explicit encouragement for those to bring those people into the conversation, it's even harder in a remote setting. And it requires you as the person running the meeting, the facilitator, it requires a bit of extra effort to engage with the people who might even have their cameras off, but they're there, and that you need their comment, you need their opinion. And especially this is true once after you've worked with a particular group of stakeholders for a while and you appreciate the value that a couple of those quiet people can add, it's even more important to be able to bring them out. So I don't have groundbreaking techniques for doing so, other than just being sure to explicitly ask for their opinion, and occasionally or even multiple times during a meeting, to make sure they don't feel left out, that they feel part of the group, but more importantly, that that they have value to add and you're seeking that value from them.
Yeah, I mean, at that point as well, I mean, the importance of it can't be overemphasized really, because there's so many times I can recount of the quiet person in the room, the person who doesn't like to speak up too much. When they tend to, or when you speak to them afterwards, the information you get from them tends to be very valuable, because they're the type of person that maybe have been able to listen and digest what everyone else is saying as well. So overlooking their view and overlooking the fact they have perhaps digested a lot more information would be a mistake. Taking them to one side, perhaps asking them separately, would be a good way to get that expertise from them without putting them in an uncomfortable position if they are indeed uncomfortable.
And that was the point I was going to add. Not everybody is going to respond well to being singled out and say, Fred, what's your opinion? Or Jane, tell me. Not everybody's going to respond well to that. And so part of the rapport that you need to build is to appreciate when it's appropriate and with which people it's appropriate.
Yeah. So perhaps as a BA, I mean, if you're going to have a workshop with a group of stakeholders and you're going to invite somebody, be explicit that's going to happen up front and find out from them if they're uncomfortable in any way, and then make it okay for them to sit in quietly or have their camera off if they need to.
Right.
But just make it clear you'll follow up with them after, or you'll be able to represent any messages that they want to share that they might find difficult, because that's another option as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's such an important point. We could probably talk about that for another hour in itself, but perhaps we won't on this occasion anyway. So I think just to wrap up, as we're sort of approaching the end of the session, how do you see the role of relationship building evolving in the future of business analysis? And as that's such a simple question, Abele, if you don't mind, we'll start with you first.
Okay. I feel like with the advent of AI and automation tools, in future, BAs are going to be more than just doing requirement gathering. They're going to be mediators. They're going to be communicators. They're going to be translators. That's how I feel. And I know that the role of a BA can never be taken by a robot, even in the future, because nothing beats that human relationship. Nothing beats that human touch and interaction methods. So
Yeah,
that's it.
agree. I mean, what's come across in your answer and all the things we've talked about today is that beneath the techniques and beneath the approaches is a fundamental care, actually. Fundamentally, we actually care what the stakeholders need and want or what their situation is. And I'm not sure there's any AI out there yet that can actually truly care about the stakeholders. But I'll be happy to be corrected if anyone's out there with any AI that does. So excellent start to the final question. David, what's your view on that point as well about evolving?
Okay. I'll just pick up from where Abele stopped. I will say that right now, in this time and in this era, I'm gonna put it this way: that business analysts, right, need to master digital empathy. I'm gonna put it that way. So, digital empathy in such a way that they leverage new collaboration tools, like she rightly mentioned. AI is here and is here to stay. All right. So if you look at it that way, new collaboration tools, but the fundamental right here is that trust, active listening, consistency, they will always remain timeless. So if you look at it, those three things to keep on going and the future of relationship building to excel in, I would say, anywhere you find yourself. It might not even be in your career path, but your day-to-day activity and people you interact with. If you see that, if you take this into practice, okay, if you do active listening, empathy, you listen more, and you understand people or stakeholder, that will go a long way.
And what you said there about digital empathy as well makes me think about maybe people not just concentrating on relationships with people, which is massively important, but trying to build a relationship with how they use AI as well. But again, that's probably one for another day as well. A huge topic. I'm conscious as well. I want to give Scott an opportunity as well to see us out on this one in terms of how he sees the role of BA and relationship building evolving.
Very uncharacteristic of me. I have nothing to add. I'm impressed and happy with what Abele and David said. So I'm good. I like what they had to say.
Well, what a probably a great way to end. And I won't spoil it by adding my own view either. I think what they both said for that last point, and indeed, you've all given responses and shared your views very openly about how we can build rapport. Hopefully, those watching this, I'm sure they will, can take some of your insight and build some really good relationships, build that rapport with their stakeholders as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure they will. But so maybe all that's left really is just to thank the three of you for spending the time to share your insights. It's always good to hear from you and to meet you as well.
Thank you for having us.
Look forward to hearing from you again, either
Thank you so much for having us.
Different conferences.
Thank you for having me, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Scott, thank you for sharing the book. I would have said probably I'll ask for it later, but I'll get a copy of mine.
And I'll add my thanks too, John. Thanks for bringing these three random people together for this conversation. I enjoyed it.
There we go. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.